Right?
How are you grown? Inside your mother?
Right in there.
Are you sure?
Well, that's what she told me. I have to believe her. I don't know.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I'm going to do this video as a shout out to another channel, but also as a top 10 that I love doing that I haven't really done on the channel yet, but it's because I was building up to do a bigger number next year. So I'll explain that I need to read some books, some other books, before I feel like I can do it properly. But because I wanted to give a shout out to the channel, I thought, well, I'll do the same video that they did, and I'll do my own version of it, and I'll explain why I'm going to come back to this next year. So, a really good video. There's only got like 165 subs or something, called Hardy's Books. It's run by a guy called Ross and his wife. Didn't catch his wife's name, I don't think. Lauren. It's either Lauren. I think it's Lauren. Anyway, I think it's Ross and Lauren. Hardy's Books. Really good channel. And definitely worth checking out. And they did a really cool top 10 science fiction books, or sci-fi and speculative fiction, I think they called it. And I think it's quite, it's just to avoid people moaning at them in the comments, going, well, that's not really sci-fi, whatever. So that's all good. And it's a really good video. And I can see that we've probably got similar tastes. So I thought it'd be good to do my own top 10 and also talk about why I've hesitated to do a bigger number, because I wanted to do like a top 50, really, a top 50 science fiction books, and I thought I might have got to do that this year, because I've planned to do this for over a year, and I thought I'll end up doing it this year, but it's not happened because I didn't want to do it until I'd reread a couple of things and read a few things for the first time, which I'll mention in a minute. So I'm going to go through my top 10, and then but check out Hardy's Books, really good channel, and you can see the original video that inspired this video. So this is the top 10 sci-fi and speculative fiction books, and let me know in the comments if you like these books or you know these books. So let's just start with a book that I have mentioned a few times on the channel, but I love it so much. Exhalation, Ted Chiang. So this is a collection of short stories. He's only written 2 books, and both of them are short story books, and it's interesting because short stories are the bedrock of science fiction. It's how science fiction grew. They're originally short stories, and some of the early novels were fix-ups of lots of short stories put together. Books like The Martian Chronicles and City by Simak and things like that. So short stories were the way that science fiction was produced in the early days. So we shouldn't underestimate short stories. And this collection, both collections are brilliant. Both of them deserve to be in my top 10. But this is my favourite out of the 2. But it's absolutely brilliant. And what Ted Chiang does in both books is he thinks about how technology might change society, and therefore how technology would change us, and looks at human nature in a really deep way. I described this after I read it as the deepest book I've ever read. And this has come from someone who's read tons of philosophy books and political books, blah, 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 blah. But I think this really does think about what makes humans humans and that kind of thing. And it's just such a fantastic book. So I'd recommend this loads. I did do a video on this and the other Ted Chiang book about 18 months ago. So if you want to check that out, that's cool. So I'll talk about it in more detail. But it's a brilliant book. And this came out in 2019, so this is actually the most recent one out of the ones I'm going to mention, but it deserves it, even though I've only known it for a few years. It's just such a phenomenal book that it blew me away, and still does. The stories still linger in my mind. So 2019's Exhalation, Ted Chiang, a thriller now. So a great. I can't really tell you what the kind of science fiction it is because it will spoil it. But at the heart of it is a love story. The pace is incredible. You cannot put it down, and you'll read 20 pages and feel like you've only read 2 pages. Dark Matter, Blake Crouch. Such a brilliant book. So there are some people that really shocked me and said that they just thought it was okay, or a bit ordinary, or a bit airport fiction. But it's so much more than that. It's very intelligent. It's written with a lot of heart, but a lot of thought behind it. It's the concept that it plays with is always a really good thing to play with. And again, I won't tell you what it is because it'll spoil it. But that's always a really cool thing. And because of the trope it's using, the kind of finale, the last bit of the book is so cool. The way that it all comes together, and he's got to wrap up the story is really good, and wraps it up absolutely referencing the love story at the heart of it. So yeah, Blake Crouch, Dark Matter, absolutely amazing. And this is from 2016. So 2016, Dark Matter. So again, another quite recent one. We're going to go back a little further now. And this is a book from 1952. So this is Alfred Bester's Demolition Man. So again, there are two very famous books by Alfred Bester. There's this one, and there's The Stars, My Destination. And both books deserve to be in this list, but this is my favourite out of the two. The other one has got loads and loads of layers and ideas to it, but I love the central premise of this, and I love the spirit in the book, and the fact that it's a really good example, actually, of a book where you don't like the characters, but you're absolutely gripped. None of the characters are likeable in this. And it plays around with telepathy, and I think it's the best book that plays around with telepathy. And due to this central character wanting to eliminate competition in his business, he owns a huge company, and he wants to eliminate competition. He wants to kill a rival businessman, but he can't do it easily because telepathy is like a standard thing in this society, in this future society, and he's got you have these blockers that you can have that might prevent someone from reading your mind, and it's all wrapped up in the way that he wants to get away with murder, despite the fact telepathy is everywhere. It's really good. So this came out in 1952, and again it was serialized in magazines. So back then, they were. It was shorter chunks, so that's why short stories were so big. So in 1952, this came out, and it won the first ever Hugo Award. So this was the thing that kicked it off in the Hugo Awards, and it won that in 1953, but it came out in 1952. Such a brilliant book. Alfred Bester's The Demolition Man. Definitely recommend you read that one. Then we have the great Ursula K. Le Guin. So I could have chosen a number of her books, to be fair, and Ross from Hardy's Books did pick The Left Hand of Darkness, which is fair enough. Could have picked that one. The thing for me with this one, so this came out in 1974, and the thing with this one is I love the way that she plays with political theory and looks at a planet and a moon that have both got completely different political systems, and how there's like an envoy that's trying to broker peace between the two, and he's discovering sort of the harsh truths of both the very ultra-capitalist society on one end and the anarchist society on the other end. And it's really interesting, and it's really done well. And you can see that she's playing around with her own thoughts about the pros and cons. It's just a really, really well put together, brilliant and intelligent science fiction book. So Ursula K. Le Guin, The Dispossessed. That's another one. That's number 4. Okay, we're going to go right back now to the first ever science fiction book. This was mentioned by Hardy's Books as well. It's a standard. Everyone's going to say it, but it would be a bit weird me not saying it because it's such a great book. So Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which I am going to be rereading soon. And I don't know what copy this is, but it originally came out in 1815. This is probably the 1830s edition, possibly. But I'm going to read the 1815 version when I read it again. But it's an amazing book. Obviously, you don't need to know the plot. You know the plot. But what's interesting about it is the philosophical discourse that happens in the book about creating life, abandoning life, regret and hubris. All that stuff is all in here. It's a fantastic book, and definitely recommend it. So yeah, so 1815, that one came out originally, so we did go right back to there. But then we come back to the present day again, because an author that I've praised quite a lot on the channel, that I still think is quite underrated, and I think she's so brilliant, is Claire North. And my favourite Claire North book came out in 2015, so again, relatively recently, called Touch. The most popular book by her is The First 15 Lives of Harry August, and that is a fantastic book. So absolutely fine with that being more popular than this, but for me, this is my favourite one. And it's about a being that can travel to different human bodies, kind of possess them for any length of time that they want to by touching them. And it starts off with this character trying to investigate why one of the previous hosts was murdered, and she goes from host to host to host to host to host to try and figure this out. And then through the course of the book, she becomes, or she, not necessarily she, it becomes hunted itself. And it's really good. So it's kind of like a thriller. There's a little bit of detective element to it. And what's really good about it is the prose. So like when this entity is possessing a human being, it can feel and smell and sense everything that's in that body, and it's so vividly done, and it's just the way it explores that is amazing, and it's a really, really good thriller as well, and you're wondering what's how it's all going to resolve. So yeah, Touch by Claire North, I definitely recommend it, and as I said, it's fame comes off the back of that one as well, but it's so brilliant. So yeah, easily one of my favourite books, but certainly deserves to be in this list. And then in 1951, you've got John Wyndham's The Day of the Triffids. So next month is December, and the Winter of Wyndham starts, an event that I created to try and get people to look at John Wyndham, because I think he's amazing. This is my favourite John Wyndham book. It is the most famous one, and there are kind of three major books that people choose as their favourites, but for me it's this one. I think it's amazing. I think it's really powerful. It's at the time it's quite innovative, but I love the ending as well. I love the sense of dread in it. It's fantastic. So apocalyptic book where almost everybody's blind, and you've got these awful plants going around killing everybody. Amazing. Day of the Triffids. Okay, the two last ones. So that was number 3, deliberately number 3, because these last 3 are definitely my top 3. So number 2, I Am Legend. I love this book so much, and I've read it a number of times, and I reread it in one fell swoop during COVID. So when I was recovering from hospital, I thought I'm going to read I Am Legend without a gap, and I just sat there because I couldn't really move anyway, and I sat there, read the whole thing, and it's just so powerful. It's so brilliant, so powerful. It's so vividly written. I just love it. And you obviously, if you don't know the book, you'll know the story from the films. But the reason why I did that is the films are nothing like the book. So there's 4 films out there based on the book, and they're all varying degrees of being different from the book. But check out the book, because it really is special. So I Am Legend, from Richard Matheson, and it really is just incredible. And another old one, it's from 1954, but Richard Matheson's a hell of an author, and that's my number 2. And my number 1 is a book that I've read twice, and I absolutely love it. Again, it's from the 50s, from 1959, and it's Daniel Keyes' Flowers for Algernon. This is one of those great things that have been done a little bit since by different people, like Stephen King's Lawnmower Man and that kind of thing, where someone is put through an experiment to increase their intelligence, and it's just beautifully written, and you really care for the character, and it's just such a fantastic book. And the main character, Charlie, is someone with special educational needs, if you like, and he's mocked at work, and through the course of this experimentation, he becomes much more articulate, much more able to defend himself, much more confident, and all that kind of thing's explored. It's really, really good. So yeah, Flowers for Algernon. If you haven't read it, I insist that you read it. So that's my number one. So that's 9 books. I'm doing 10 in response to Harley's books 10. So the other one I'm going to mention is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So the reason why it's not with the others because I couldn't find the book. So I'm just going to put a little picture there, and you can see that it's an awesome. It's such a brilliant book. It's epic. It's from 2015. It explores the idea of a terraforming project that was all around advancing the human race because it needed another planet that goes wrong, and then it ends up with an evolutionary process starting with spiders on a planet, and it's just phenomenal the way that works. And it kind of like there's 2 stories going together. There's the evolution of the spiders on the planet, plus what happens to the humans that were initially supposed to be getting that evolutionary treatment. And it's very complex and interesting and brilliantly researched because there's lots of spidery things going on, and it's just brilliant. It's really good. It's huge, but the pace is fantastic. There's always stuff going on. So Children of Time, 2015, Adrian Tchaikovsky was the 10th one. So that will probably top 3 will probably stay my top 3 when I do my bigger list. But what I was going to say was I can't really do the bigger list until I feel like I am justified in doing it. And there's some big holes in my reading. So I've been reading science fiction since I was a kid. And despite the fact I've read so much science fiction, there are a few holes. So one of the holes is Alistair Reynolds' Revelation Space. I've had this for a while. You can see it's perfect condition because I haven't hardly picked it up, just been sitting there on my bookshelves. But Revelation Space, I do want to read that to figure out if I really like it. I've read other things by Alistair Reynolds, but not this, and this is like the big one. So there's Revelation Space I need to read. I want to read Rendezvous with Rama, and I have read Childhood's End, and I've read other little bits in when I was a lot younger that I've forgotten about. But I read Childhood's End relatively recently, quite liked it. I did like it. But Rendezvous with Rama I want to read because a lot of people think it's their favourite, Arthur C. Clarke. I really want to read On the Beach by Neil Schutz. That's like a classic post-apocalyptic book. So I do want to read that as well. That might be in the mix somewhere if I read that. This is a bit more of a predictable hole because I really want to read this because I've read the book that she wrote before it. So I read Doomsday by Connie Willis, and this is To Say Nothing of the Dog, which is the same setup but like another story based around these people that go back in history go back in time to discover the reality of historic events. And To Say Nothing of the Dog is apparently more humorous than the first one, Doomsday, but I really want to read this. And if Mark from Book Time with Elvis is watching, I've still got in my mind that we might be able to read this together. But Connie Willis, Say Nothing of the Dog, is definitely one I need to read before I start looking at my all-time favourites. And then one more that is definitely another hole. You can see a lot of these are the SF Masterworks. And that's Earth Abides by George R. Stewart. Another post-apocalyptic one. So 2, is it? No, 3? No, 2 of them are, actually, only 2. But yeah, this is one that everything I know about this, it makes me want to read it. So sometimes you hear about classic books and everything you hear about them kind of puts you off. But this one, everything I hear about it makes me want to read it. So Earth Abides is another one. So there we are. So I'm going to definitely do a bigger list of my favourites next year. But those are 5 of the books I'm going to read before I do that. And there's a few other books I'm going to reread. But in the meantime, this was essentially an 18-minute shout-out to Hardy's books. Let me know what you think of those books. Thanks a lot. Bye.
what it's like to be